Welcome back to another edition of the Night Report podcast. I'm your host, Mike Broadbent. Joining me once again is my co-host, Richie Schneiderite. And we have Sammy Jacobs of Hoosier Huddle to come talk everything about the Rutgers-Indiana matchup this Saturday. Sammy, thanks for joining us, man.
Yeah, thanks. Early morning, but that's good. I'm on fall break as a teacher, so sleeping until 8:30 was nice.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Really appreciate you teaching the youth out there. I know it's not an easy job, especially in today's day and age. Speaking of not easy jobs, it seems like it hasn't been the easiest season for Indiana or its coaching staff this year. Talk about how your season's gone so far and what you kind of expect for the rest of the season for Indiana.
It has not gone well, to put it simply. Anytime you open up the season with Ohio State, it kind of just puts a damper on the whole thing. You kind of want to take away the positives. You only lost by 20 points, or you only let Marvin Harrison Jr. get 18 yards and stuff like that, and then you get a nice performance against Indiana State, but it's an FCS squad. The Louisville game, which is the third game of the season, that game kind of is the turning point of your season. And I'll put it, my mom was at the game and she put it perfectly. It was really boring at first as Indiana fell down 21-0, and then it got exciting, and then we fell off a cliff as they came up just short on the goal line on fourth down. And if you can't, that's the best way to sum up Indiana football the last couple years. Especially last year, finishing, you beat Michigan State, you look like you might beat Purdue, and Dexter Williams gets hurt and stuff like that. But this year, they're sitting at 2-4. Tom Allen's seat is getting warmer. I wouldn't call it hot yet, just because there's a nice $20.8 million buyout at the end of the year that is keeping his seat kind of cooler. But you came in with some expectations, the 15th ranked transfer class in the country. You bring in Trace Jackson Davis's brother, Taven Jackson, at quarterback. He's a former 4-star recruit.
Oh, I had no idea that was his brother. Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's his brother. You have some guys on defense, some guys on offense, and then you get your butt kicked by Maryland and your butt kicked by a really good Michigan team. That was really impressed with Michigan. But yeah, that's where the season is. It hasn't been a great one. And you just hope that Indiana could, pull a few wins out, in the back half of the year.
So I know you just said Tom Allen's not really on the hot seat, but warm seat, I guess, if you want to call it that. Does that buyout lower at all when the season's over, or is it just that's $20 million after this season?
It's $20 million after this season.
Okay.
It doesn't lower until I think December 1st, 2024.
Wow.
I think it. Yeah.
I don't know who his agent is, but shout out to that guy.
Yeah.
I kind of want to take it back because Indiana fans were justifiably so super high on Tom Allen, especially the 2021 season. I was cheering so loud at a bar around a bunch of Penn State fans when you guys knocked off Penn State in 2020, the COVID year. Michael Penix Jr. looked like, a Heisman candidate. Obviously, he dealt with some injuries and transferred out. I kind of want to ask a two-part question, and I know you're not supposed to do these kind of things, but what is the last few years been like from the such highs for Indiana football to kind of like coming back to earth? And what's the relationship with fans and Michael Penix Jr.? Are they more happy for him that he's being successful, or more so thinking like what could have been if he stayed around?
I'll answer your second question first.
Okay.
I think, at least for me, I'm also a fan too, as an alumni above IU and stuff like that. I'm happy for him. He's a good dude, a hell of a player, but he needed to move on from IU, and IU needed to move on from him. He had, 2 ACL injuries, 2 shoulder injuries, and you couldn't attach the program to him anymore. And really, it was, he needed a new setting. IU needed to move on, and so be it. You also have Kalen DeBoer, who's a former IU offensive coordinator, and a lot of their staff members are IU guys who, covering the program, you became close to. Nick Sheridan's their tight end coach. William Inge, I think, is one of their defensive coaches. There's just a lot of IU ties at this Washington. Um, and yeah, you end up rooting for him. And I try not to go to the what if, because based on history, that what if is he probably gets hurt and doesn't do anything. But good for him, happy for him. He was always a stand-up guy. Yeah, heck of a player. He's a heck of a player. You saw this as a freshman with that arm. And then the second question, crashing down to earth. Yeah, it's been rough. It's been real rough. You had 2019 and 2020 were such good seasons. You went 8-4 and 6-2, and in those seasons you went to 2 Florida Bowls. You probably should have won at least one of them. But you go from 6-2 and an Outback Bowl bid, and you beat Penn State, you beat Michigan, and then you go 2-10, and it was just there was no steady decline. It was bam, you're right off the cliff, and I think it was shocking, just shocking.
Because I remember you guys were ranked pretty highly coming into the 21 season. I think you guys played Cincinnati early in that year, right?
We were ranked 17th coming into the year. We played at Iowa, and the second play of the game on offense for IU is a pick six. Penix throws another pick six to end the first half, and it just outside of that, and then Cincinnati. Say what you want. That was a good Cincinnati team. That was like if you wanted to bottle up the atmosphere that could be at IU. That was a sold out game, mostly IU fans. They were hyped up for that game. You got out to a 14-0 lead, and then the damn targeting penalty on Micah McFadden, where he bumps heads with Desmond Ridder. It would have been a punt. You have the ball 14-0 going into halftime, and it's that's the what could have been. If you win that game, maybe you get some confidence going, and it doesn't end up like that. But it's not on the referee. Indiana had 3 trips inside 10, got 0 points, and you lost by 10.
Yeah, it sounds eerily similar to what happened to us last week. We got a fourth and 2 stop, and they, it looked like a great play. They go to commercial, and then they cue a targeting review upstairs. They didn't call it on the field, and one of our best players got kicked out. They got a first down rather than a turnover. So Rutgers fans are not happy with targeting rules either right now, by any means. But let's talk about this offense. You talked about Taven Jackson, the quarterback. You guys got a lot of good skill players from Cam Camper to your dual-headed running back, Christian Turner and Jalen Lucas. There's a little bit of a question right now about who's going to be the quarterback because you guys changed your OC, and Tom Allen said he's not going to say who the quarterback is, but whoever it is will be the quarterback for the rest of the season. So if you're using your crystal ball here, who do you think is the quarterback the rest of the season for IU?
Antoine Randall, maybe, hopefully. So, I don't know. And this is, I think it's more the coaching stuff. They don't know who the guy is. It's you saw it through fall camp, through spring practice. Both of these guys had days where they were good and days where they were bad. And it is so inconsistent, and the swings are so wild. You're trying to find the hot hand, and it's what do you do when there is no hot hand? And that's been the case. If I were coaching, I'd probably start Brendan Sorsby. He's a better runner. I think he's a better fit for the Rod Carey offense, which it's not going to change much because you can't really change much in the middle of the season, but it does affect play calling. I think he's a little bit more careful with the ball, although, they turned the ball over, I think, 5 times against Michigan. 3 by Taven and 2 by Brendan Sorsby, or 3 and 1 or something like that. But it just seems like he has more awareness of the offense. He's not audibling late. He gets the ball out on time. It just looks like he's more ready to run the kind of offense that IU wants to run. But it's anybody's guess. And this quarterback carousel has gone on for way too long. But it's not like head games. It's not, we need to keep from Rutgers who's starting. I legit think they did not know as of whatever Monday afternoon. And we'll get an update from Tom Allen this afternoon. but I don't know. They don't know.
I wanted to ask you, since Rod Carey is the new OC, hell of a journey by him, by the way. Quality control last year to midseason O-line coach to now midseason offensive coordinator. Have you seen any like legitimate scheme changes or just differences in play calling? I know midseason changes are hard, but
Definitely a difference in play calling. Walt Bell was running the kind of triple option stuff to the short side, and it just wanted you to make you put your head through a wall. But they didn't run that against Michigan, so that's a win, right?
Yeah.
So there's definitely a difference in play calling. I think there's a difference in just how the offense carries itself. But yeah, a heck of a journey. He started last year as the defensive quality control coach. Moves over the offensive line. Offensive quality control coach this year, now offensive coordinator. At least for the foreseeable future, I think his contract goes for OC through 2025. But we'll see how long everybody's still standing in Bloomington.
Sure.
It depends on how this season goes.
I was looking over some of your players, and something really jumped out to me. Jalen Lucas, the running back, seems to be like Mr. Do-It-All in your offense. He leads Indiana in rushing attempts, rushing yards, rushing touchdowns, receptions, and receiving touchdowns. I don't think I've ever seen a player who's had leading a team in all those statistical categories. Is he just the guy that is getting a lot of dump-offs? Like, if you could point to something about his production being that high, what would you say it is?
He's the most skilled player on offense. And I think you guys saw that last year as he took the opening kickoff back against Rutgers for touchdown. He's their fastest player, their most skilled player, and they try to get him the ball any way they can. His rushing touchdowns came against Indiana State, where he just outran the defense. Last week, they did a nice wide receiver double pass to him. He was wide open downfield. He's becoming more of a threat on offense than just on special teams, which is kind of predictable, because why are you kicking to the guy who's an All-American kick returner? But they'll get him the ball in any way possible, and I think what you've seen more with Rod Carey than under Walt Bell is that he's been used as a decoy a lot more. Defense is kind of keyed on him, and they while he led in all those categories, defense were, hey, if he's moving, we're sending like 4 guys with him. And now it's okay. We're going to move him, not get him the ball, and go out the backside or find somebody else to throw the ball to. And I think that's the main difference in that offense that you saw, at least against Michigan.
Yeah, now I want to ask you about that offensive line room. I haven't watched a ton of Indiana at all this year, to be honest with you, but the PFF grades look pretty solid on pass blocking and decent on run blocking. And they also have a pretty good O-line coach in Bob Bostad. So how's that unit doing this season?
They're so much better than they were last year. Although I think, you and Mike could have been better than last year's unit at some point. They're no longer. It's no longer like a JV team playing against the freshman team in college, where it's just you just bum rush the quarterback and it's over. There's been an actual pocket for the quarterback this year, which we have not seen at Indiana in 2 years. The offensive line kind of got beat up by Michigan, but every offensive line gets beat up by Michigan in the second half and things like that. But I don't think the offensive line is the problem this year. It's Bob Bostad's trying to undo 3 years of bad coaching with these guys, and that's tough to overcome. But they look a lot better than they have in the last couple of years.
Who else should we be looking out for on Saturday from Indiana's offense?
Indiana's offense, Donovan McCulley. He's former quarterback, 4-star quarterback. He decided he wanted to play receiver. This is his second full year playing receiver. I believe he leads IU in receiving yards, besides Jalen Lucas. He has become the go-to receiver for IU out of that group. He's big. He's 6'5". He's athletic. He's still learning the nuances of the position, but he could go up and grab the ball and things like that. Now, he's not the explosive receiver that you'd like, but that also has to do with the accuracy of the quarterback, throwing it high and making him jump and all that stuff. And Omar Cooper, I don't know how much he'll play just because he's a redshirt freshman, but he had that. I don't know if you guys saw it on social media, that catch against Michigan where he landed on his head, and that's why he was in bounds.
Yep,
You
that
know,
looked really scary in the moment.
Yes, it did. But also unbelievable that that was the only part of his body that landed in bounds. But he's come on nicely this year. He played more under Rod Kelly than he did under Walt Bell. And then I should probably get Josh Henderson back. He was their best running back last year. He could catch the ball out of the backfield, run the ball as well. He was the most consistent one there. He's been out the last couple games, I believe, with some sort of injury. But, you know, nobody tells us anything on injuries. They just, the availability report, but then they don't tell you anything. So,
and then they're supposed to release it 2 hours before the game, and it doesn't get released until like an hour and 15 before the game.
Yeah.
Oh, there was an issue getting it submitted, blah, blah. But
Stupid.
Rutgers fans should be familiar with Josh Henderson. He's a New Jersey guy out of the class of 2019, I believe, out of the Hunt School.
Yeah. 4-star.
Who do you want to see play quarterback for Indiana the rest of the year? To put the onus on you. If you're the OC, if you have the decision-making powers, who are you putting out there for the remaining 6 games of the season for IU?
Ooh, that's a tough question. Probably going Brandon Swordsby against Rutgers. If he loses against Rutgers, I think you play the true freshman. Your season's probably down the drain. That's how you build depth, right? You got to play young guys, and I think that's what you do. You go start sprinkling in this true freshman, whether it's bringing him in the second half of games or starting him. I would go. If IU loses to Rutgers, I start seeing, hey, what do we have for next year, or, you know, the next staff or whatever.
Interesting. Switching to the defense, I know Chad Wilt's the guy there. I'm a big fan of his personally. I know he's a really nice guy. I don't know how well he's doing as a coach, but just kind of break down how he's been so far this season, working with what he's got.
Yeah, well, Matt Guerrieri he was an analyst at Ohio State last year. He was brought in to call the plays on defense. Him and Chad Wilt are co-coordinators. But, you know, the first couple weeks, it looked like that they were doing a good job. You held Ohio State to 23 points. You held Louisville to 21 points. They probably should have won that game. And then, you know, you saw an explosive play against Akron. You saw a couple explosives against Louisville early in the game. Maryland tore Indiana apart. Michigan kind of big played you to death too. So, you know, it's Indiana. You know, just like Rutgers, you're worried about depth, and I think Indiana starters are good, but they're playing too many snaps and they're trying to do too much. And things like that. So I think the defensive system is sound, and I don't know if it's on the coaches, you know, players trusting the coaches or players trusting themselves, but they're trying to do too much. And when that happens, nothing good happens. You leave your job to go do somebody else's, and that's when the 50-yard touchdown pass or, you know, a long run happens and stuff like that.
Rutgers fans can also relate to that because last year we had a Big Ten average starter at least at every position on defense, but the depth was just such a huge drop off. Anybody got dinged up, anybody got winded, that second unit would just get toasted. And you guys have some legit dudes on defense, like Philip Bleedy, your interior defensive lineman, is a dude. Aaron Casey, your linebacker, is a really good player. You got 2 really good safeties in Lewis Moore and Philip Dunham. You got a 6th-year transfer from Western Michigan, and Andre Carter, who looks like he's having a great year. You know, who are if you could pick like 2 or 3 guys from your defense who, for you, really stand out, who would those players be?
Aaron Casey and Andre Carter probably stand out the most. Aaron Casey, he was all Big Ten linebacker last year. He diagnoses plays really, really well. He's the heart and soul of that defense. Andre Carter, if they would have call a holding penalty against the offensive lineman blocking him, it would be really, really helpful. But he could get after the quarterback and make some plays. Philip Leedy, he got hurt against Michigan. We'll see where he is on the availability report. But he's in Indiana's best interior lineman. Now, interior linemen don't stand out other than that they're big dudes. And if you're talking about them, either they made an unbelievable play or they got hurt.
Yep.
Nick Tuer is another guy who transferred from Stanford, 6'4" corner, just a big corner who could play well. And then, of course, the safeties you mentioned in Dunham and Lewis Moore have had their interceptions, and they need to get back to that, but they're playmakers on defense too.
Just looking at stats and grades and all that, secondary easily the best unit on the team, or on defense, I should say.
Is their best unit? I would go defensive line.
Okay.
It's still, I think the talent on the defensive line is there. They've made some plays, but again, it's depth. What do you do when that second, third teams come in? Same at linebacker. I think Jacob Magnum-Ferrara and Aaron Casey are really good, but there's nobody behind them that they trust.
Mm-hmm.
And then the secondary, it's kind of been banged up with Jameer Johnson missing some time and things like that. But yeah, I mean, anytime I think Indiana's given up 96 points the last two games. So is their best unit? Not really sure right now.
That's fair. Now, I wanted to ask you, since this game is out in Indiana, what's kind of the feeling like among the fan base? I know you kind of mentioned it before. It's like win or rebuild at this point.
It's basketball season, guys.
Okay.
Hoosier hysteria is Friday night. I think that's the attitude. There's a lot of apathy over the last 2 years. There's also a lot of anger. And I don't know if that's just from a few people on social media or whatever, but there have been former players calling out Allen and the coaching staff, former equipment managers calling them out, and there have been players to come out and defend Allen too. But yeah, it's kind of toxic. I don't think you'll have a great crowd for IU, but this fan base, it's kind of soft. As soon as something goes wrong, it's over. Oh, this stinks. He stinks. I mean, it's almost like being a New York fan in the Midwest, where the first game of the Yankees season, and Giancarlo Stanton takes his swings and misses. Get this bum out of here. That's what it's like. Or if watching the Jets on opening night, and Aaron Rodgers goes down, and the season's done. This is garbage. Whatever. Flipping off the camera. That's the feeling you get with Indiana football, is just like, we're so done. And that's part of it is, it's a $20.8 million buyout, but you also can't lose the fan base. And no matter how small it is, you can't lose it. And you can't go back to having crowds of whatever, 15, 20,000. I don't care what the announced crowd is and how many tickets they may have sold on the internet. But the actual crowds, you're going to lose more money than that, especially going into the new Big Ten. And congratulations on your non-Big Ten East schedule. We had a good one, and then they changed it. We had no Ohio State, no Michigan, and then bam, they changed it, and we have Ohio State, Michigan. So
we are jumping for joy over here because we have not gotten any favors from the Big Ten since we joined the conference, and I think we're all kind of okay with it, given the alternative of us still being in whatever the Big East / AAC is at this point. But yeah, I think we all were just like in complete shock, wondering if like we got sent the wrong schedule, because we went from having Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State next year to none of them. I don't know how it happened. I'm just gonna pretend like it was supposed to happen and not ask any questions. It's like when you get the wrong change at the casino or something like that. It's like, oh, you gave me $100 chip. I was supposed to get a $25. I'm not gonna say anything. I'm just gonna take my chip and walk away. Before we get to predictions here, you mentioned basketball. Obviously, Rutgers and Indiana. I know you're a football podcast, but I assume you're also a hoops fan of IU, right?
Yeah, I guess so.
You
Yeah,
guess so?
as an alumni of the school, yes, I root for Indiana basketball, but I'm
Mhm.
like the guy whose friends introduce him is like he's the one Indiana guy who doesn't really like IU basketball.
Woodson is putting together one hell of a 24 class. Steve Peichel is as well. I think that's going to be a great rivalry for years to come. It already has been, but general vibes around Mike Woodson right now amongst the fan base. Are they higher than ever on the guy?
I think so. You know,
Yeah.
there were early in his tenure, there's vibes that he wasn't totally bought in and into recruiting and was kind of lazy and stuff like that. But he landed Liam McNeely last week, and
Yeah.
was it Boogie Flan is committing somewhere
Saturday.
tonight or
Tomorrow.
on Friday. Yeah,
Friday.
Yeah.
Friday.
Yeah. Sorry.
Sorry. Teacher brain on vacation. I have no idea what day it is. So, the vibes around IU basketball are pretty good. However, again, a soft fan base mentally. What happens when you lose a game? What happens, you host Kansas, what happens if they come in and kick your butt? Or you go down and play Auburn and Atlanta in December and you lose that game. It's how do you handle those losses? It goes for football and basketball too. They Trace Jackson Davis was a special player, like a really special player, and probably the best player I've seen at IU in my time. I started there in 2005, so I missed a lot of the old school guys, but he was a generational player. I don't know if you can replace that. And then you have issues with guards and health and all that stuff. And, we'll see. They could be good. And the good thing about college basketball, which I hope college football doesn't turn into, losses in December don't matter.
Yep.
Regular season
Exactly.
losses don't matter. Just go 500 or better in the Big Ten. Split some of your big non-conference games. Bam, you're in the tournament.
Exactly. Yeah. I hate the idea of them expanding the tournament even further, but that has been kicked around. It's like, why not make it to 96? And it's kind of like, well, why not just make it, so everyone makes the tournament then? It loses its luster if you have too many teams.
Yeah, and then you have people who are like, college football needs to be more like college basketball. No, college football is the
Yeah.
greatest sport on the planet. Why are you
Yeah.
changing it?
Yeah, part of the allure to college football is every game really does matter. And like if you have a team that, let's say a team with 3 losses ends up winning the national title in the 12-team format, I think that kind of just totally invalidates the regular season entirely. I just like, what's the
Yeah,
point
you're
of
seeing
having?
it you're seeing it in baseball now,
Yes,
where
yep,
these wild card teams come in, whatever. The Orioles were the best team in the American League all year, and then all of a sudden they get swept in a series they hadn't been swept in like 91 previous series. So that's I hope they don't make football like that where whatever Alabama cruises through the regular season, might lose 2 or 3 games, gets that 10 spot in the playoff, and all of a sudden, guys turn into Tua Tagovailoa and Jerry Jeudy and all those guys, and they run the table. So we'll see.
yeah. Getting sidetracked here. I do want to get your prediction for this game, because I think a lot of Rutgers fans feel they're riding pretty high on the horse right now. We had that big comeback last week against Michigan State. I think this team's coming in with a lot of confidence. The last couple years, they've gotten out to a hot start and then just like kind of bled away a season. And everybody thought the last 2 seasons they both started 3-0. It looked like a bowl game was more likely than not, and then we finished 5 wins and 4 wins. So I think Rutgers is going to come into this game motivated to close out the year. But what's your feeling on how this game is going to go on Saturday?
Well, Indiana's going to have to outwork Rutgers, which is hard because you got Rutgers and Greg Schiano coach team. They work. It's hard to outwork them. They might be out talented by some teams, but they're not going to outwork you. And that was shown last week against Michigan State. Now Michigan State also totally collapsed in
Yep.
a ridiculous way, but it's what's the desperation level of Indiana? Is there that level of we got to win this game or it's over, or is it, hey, we've got 5 more games after this, and we play Illinois, Purdue, Michigan State, and we can get 4 or 5 wins total there. That being said, I do think Indiana is probably a little bit more talented all around, but it's talent gets beat when people work harder than the talented people. So it's who's going to work harder. But whatever. I'll be the Indiana homer. I think it'll be a close game. But look, if Rutgers comes out and gets a big play and Indiana makes a big mistake early, I think Rutgers could run away with this thing pretty quick. Kind of like that 2021 game where McCulley fumbles on the first snap, and all of a sudden it's 34-3, and you have some shirtless students in the stands. But last year was a hard-fought game. IU gets up 14-0. It looks like, all right, you're back on track, and then Rutgers just grinds it away. I think it's going to be one of those games again, but I'll take Indiana 24, Rutgers 21. In one of those, score more points than Iowa and Minnesota combined, each of us. So,
yeah, I think I kind of tipped my hand a bit with what I was thinking. I think Rutgers comes into this game laser focused, and they have a lot of seniors starting on this team. They have a lot of guys who have never had a winning season. They went to the Gator Bowl, but that doesn't really count. And a lot of those guys kind of, we got notified like 6 days before the bowl game that they're going to participate. So they didn't really get the whole true experience. I think a lot of these guys, especially the older guys, want to leave some kind of legacy, leave some kind of, we turn this thing around. I think Rutgers does win this game. I think what you laid out does end up happening early in the game, whether it be the first quarter or the first half. I think there is some kind of mistake that Rutgers takes advantage of to go up and kind of puts this game away. I think Rutgers is going to win this game 27-17. What do you think, Rich?
Some technical difficulties because, never get a pet because they're just going to fuck up everything you have. Anyway, it looks like it's going to rain on Saturday in Indiana, if I'm correct.
Who knows? That could change.
All right. Well, it says 56 and rain, so I'm going to go with that. The over-under is 39.5. That's disgusting. That is gross. That is, I don't even know how to describe that one, but.
There was a touchdown more than Iowa, Minnesota.
Oh, there you go.
I can't believe how low total that is.
Yeah. And I think this is going to be like a similar matchup to Northwestern. I'm not saying Indiana's Northwestern. I'm saying, and don't hate me on this one, I'm saying they're worse. So I'm going to say probably like 24-7. I think it's going to be eerily similar to that Northwestern game. I think Rutgers is just going to dominate on the defensive end. Indiana's got quarterback issues. Jalen Lucas is a nice player, but it really seems like that's all they have. And then their offensive line might be able to give Rutgers a little bit of trouble on the defensive line, but that's arguably Rutgers' best unit on the team. So I do think this Rutgers defense is gonna basically take over the game, and the offense is just gonna do their typical thing where they're just gonna run, maybe an occasional pass, but mostly just run the ball down Indiana's throat, kind of.
Yeah, I mean, I could see any of the 3 outcomes happening. Although if it's 27-7, people might be mad.
Yeah,
if they still care about football, all 5 of us.
Oh man, Sammy, thanks for joining us. Tell our fans where we could find you and your work, and anything else you want to plug. Go for it.
Yeah, so my website's HoosierHuddle.com. I also do the stats for the radio broadcast for IU. So if you have fans in the Midwest who are listening, tune in on Sirius XM and listen, and we'll give some good tidbits. You can find us on Twitter, X, whatever it is called now, at Hoosier_Huddle. We have our Rutgers preview. We'll have piece of the game, matchups to watch, and all that stuff. We'll also have our game day primer coming out tomorrow night. And then, if any of your followers are going out to Bloomington, you could hit us up on Twitter for some recommendations and things like that. It is homecoming, so if you have not made reservations at hotel or at restaurants in Bloomington, good luck.
Yeah, I've heard that Bloomington is an awesome college town. I've never been there, but it is on my my list to check out one of these days. So if you have any recommendations, yeah, our fans would love to hear him.
I got one
Yep.
serious question before we sign off. Are you from the New York area or like the New Jersey tri-state area? Like, how does a
Yeah,
Jets
I
fan end
grew
up
up
in Indiana?
I grew up in Manhattan.
Okay,
Oh, cool.
fair enough.
So I'm New York Jets, Yankees. I'm the weird Jets, Yankees, Knicks fan.
Okay.
One of my good friends in elementary school's dad was doctor for the Jets, so we went to a lot of
Oh, no
bad
shit.
Jets games
Oh,
for
cool.
free.
Well, yeah.
So that's how I got sucked into being a Jets fan.
Oh, could
Yeah,
be worse.
it takes a very special person to stick with the Jets. One of our
Yeah.
occasional co-hosts, Craig, is a Jets fan, and it just seems like when you're a Jets fan, it just feels like you're just waiting for that second shoe to drop always. Like, I don't think anybody expected 4 plays in this year for Aaron Rodgers to blow his Achilles out, but
No, but one of the things I was like, I didn't really want Aaron Rodgers. I wanted somebody younger because I was afraid he was going to get hurt. I didn't
yeah.
think it would be like that in 4
Yeah.
plays, but
Because
MetLife
did that
turf.
happen with
Come on.
Vinny Testaverde after the 98 season? Like the first play of like the 99 season, everybody had like Super Bowl hopes and then blows his Achilles.
Yep, and then Tom Tupa comes in, throws 2 touchdown passes against the New England Patriots, and Ray Lucas, Rutgers legend, finishes out the regular season.
There you go. It all comes full circle here.
Yep.
Well, thanks, Sammy. You were great. I really appreciate you joining us. And for everybody at home, thanks for listening and watching. This has been another edition of the Night Report podcast. Signing off.